It's astonishing that more than 60 years after it first aired, Rod Serling's iconic television series, The Twilight Zone, still resonates very well in today's world. The original series explored a range of topics such as space travel, our prides and prejudice, and the social evils of the time. While we may not have giant Martians and flying saucers, while we may not have giant Martians just yet, The Twilight Zone still eerily hit the mark when it comes to our technology, prejudice, and vanity. This video will take a look at some of the past classic episodes to see what they got right, and 11 times The Twilight Zone predicted the future. Of course, spoiler warning, I'll be discussing some very big twist endings ahead. Tell 'em, Steven.
Plus, the twist endings are really the best part. They're like the cream filling, which later turns out to be... man.
The original Twilight Zone series spanned 5 seasons between 1959 and 1964, and continues to hold America's attention due to revivals over the years, including Oscar winner Jordan Peele's latest spin on the series.
Now, he'll have to decide what really matters to him when the laughter stops, and how much he's willing to give to the Twilight Zone.
While The Twilight Zone is purely based in the fictitious minds of Serling and his legendary band of writers, it's impossible not to notice how many plot lines have predictive accuracy.
I would probably shy away from the year 2500. I would much rather deal in 1998. The hardware that I use, I think, should be identifiable. Different, of course, because it changes every year. But I would be more prone to think in terms of, I'd like to know what happens Thursday, not in the next century.
On many occasions, Serling would use The Twilight Zone to highlight ideas about Big Brother, government surveillance, our fears, and our over-reliance on tech. In the Season 5 episode, From Agnes with Love, we meet computer programmer James Elwood, who develops a crush on a coworker. After he strikes out, he resorts to his supercomputer named Agnes for dating advice.
Millie's not that kind of a girl.
Agnes ends up giving James horrible advice, and it's soon revealed that the supercomputer has fallen in love with him. In today's age, we rely on virtual assistants for a multitude of daily tasks, from asking Alexa to play music to grabbing a burger from a fully automated machine. This Richard Donner directed episode predicts a future in which we were too reliant on tech that eventually goes HAL 9000 on us. In Season 2, we meet poor old Ed Lindsay, who finds an old-school radio from his younger days in the basement of his boarding house that he's currently living in. And to his astonishment, the radio is still blasting tunes from the 30s and 40s. The episode deals with themes of nostalgia and the desire to return to one's youth with the use of a magical on-demand radio. While the idea seemed far-fetched at the time the episode first aired, this is common today due to platforms like YouTube. With the click of a button, you can access media from damn near any recorded moment in time.
I gotta take it to anywhere. Maybe we can make a deal. Maybe together we can get somewhere. Any place is better. Starting from zero, got nothing to lose.
In the classic episode Eye of the Beholder, a young woman has gone through 11 procedures to alter her disfigured appearance into something more pleasant to the current society. At the end of the episode, when the bandages are removed, we find out that the woman is perfectly fine by our standards. It turns out everyone in this society has nightmarish pig-like faces, and the poor woman is exiled for her looks. Far too often in our current society, we are encouraged to disguise our natural differences, and pressured to conform to whatever the accepted look happens to be. The makeup industry and photo editing apps are making a killing off of this. The beauty industry alone is currently valued at $500 billion.
I myself cannot keep track of all the new, young, hot brands that are popping up in the skincare space.
While these pressures were also around during the time this episode aired, it's only getting worse as the years go by. We'll come back to this subject shortly. In the Season 2 episode, The Obsolete Man, we're transported to a future where librarian Romney Wordsworth, played by Burgess Meredith, is judged obsolete and sentenced to death by a chancellor of a fascist state that has banned all books and religion. This 25-minute reimagining of Kafka's 1925 novel The Trial still resonates very well today. Sadly, in today's world, you don't need to look too far to see governments actively discouraging everyone from believing in established facts. In the episode, Wordsworth compares the Chancellor to both Hitler and Stalin.
We had predecessors, Mr. Wordsworth, who had the beginnings of the right idea.
Yes, Hitler.
Hitler, of course.
Stalin.
Stalin, too. But their era was not one of excess. It was simply not going far enough.
While the world he lived in was a whole lot grimmer than the one we are in today, you can still find elected officials that look at the two men with great nostalgic admiration. This leads us to the Season 4 episode Hes Alive, where Peter Vollmer, played by the late Dennis Hopper, is guided by the ghost of Adolf Hitler to spark rallies and return the Nazi Party back to its glory days. The parallel to our reality is very clear. In 2019, the New York Times reported that the number of hate groups in the United States rose 4 years in a row. The Times states that this was pushed to a record high by toxic combinations of political polarization, anti-immigrant sentiment, and technologies that help spread propaganda online, according to the Southern Poverty Law Center.
Any place, every place, where there's hate, where there's prejudice, where there's bigotry. He's alive. He's alive so long as these evils exist. Remember that when he comes to your town. Remember it when you hear his voice speaking out through others. Remember it when you hear a name called, a minority attacked, any blind, unreasoning assault on a people or any human being. He's alive because through these things, we keep him alive. The time is 5 minutes to 12, midnight. There is no more darkness. The place is New York City, and this is the eve of the end. Because even at midnight, it's high noon.
In the classic episode The Midnight Sun, the Earth is somehow knocked off its usual orbit and is heading towards the sun. We meet Norma and Mrs. Bronson, who are the last people in their New York apartment due to the unbearable heat. As the temperature rises by the second, people are driven to looting and violence due to the lack of food and water. Norma and Mrs. Bronson grow delirious from the nightmarish heat before Mrs. Bronson eventually succumbs to the heat and dies. The ending's twist reveals that Norma was dreaming the whole thing, and the Earth is actually moving away from the sun towards an inevitable frozen endgame.
Isn't it wonderful to have darkness and coolness?
Yes, my dear. It's wonderful.
In real life, this episode is slowly turning into a documentary as the years go by. Earth-orbiting satellites and other technological advances have enabled scientists to see the big and frightening picture. The potential devastating future effects of global climate change include more frequent wildfires, longer periods of drought in some regions, and an increase in the number, duration, and intensity of tropical storms. In the Season 5 episode, number 12 looks just like you, people live in a dystopian future where all young adults go through a process called the transformation. We learn that each person's entire appearance is changed to an attractive design chosen from a selection of numbered models. And when someone tries to resist the procedure, they're just hypnotized and brainwashed to conform to society. Just take a scroll through your Instagram feed to see the parallels here. With the growing list of beauty filters and face smoothing apps encouraging people to remove their natural differences, we're noticing a trend of conformity. And just recently, it was revealed that TikTok's old moderation guidelines consisted of filtering out any post moderators deemed ugly or poor from its For You selection to attract more subscribers. One major theme in the Twilight Zone is the reoccurring dive into the relationship between humans and technology. In the Season 2 episode, A Thing About Machines, we meet a man who despises technology and is soon tormented by his haunted household appliances like his electric razor. And at one point in the episode, the man's car starts by itself and proceeds to chase him throughout the neighborhood. While our timeline hasn't gone into full maximum overdrive just yet, we're getting closer to true driverless vehicles roaming the streets every second. In 2017, Apple CEO Tim Cook stated that the development of a self-driving car is the mother of all AI projects. Now, there are different levels associated with driverless vehicles. Cars that require a human driver to co-share the workload are considered at a level 2 or 3, and level 5 is a true self-driving vehicle that an AI drives entirely on its own, and there isn't any human assistance. There is not yet a true self-driving car at level 5, so we don't need to hit up Emilio Estevez for help just yet. Next, Serling would take America's fear of tech a step further in the classic episode The Brain Center at Whipple's, where the owner of a manufacturing corporation, Wallace V. Whipple, is steadfast in his mission to increase output by having machines replace his human employees. He replaces thousands of workers with digital counterparts, which leads to his inevitable downfall as he eventually becomes obsolete and is replaced by a robot too. We've already mentioned modern-day technology creeping into our everyday lives, such as voice-controlled AI and machines that can make a nice burger for you, but you can also find robotic telemarketers in the workplace and even robot healthcare professionals that can interact with patients. You can also find cashier-free grocery stores popping up across the country, which has led to a growing concern of people in the workplace being replaced by a machine or AI that can do the job twice as fast. It's currently predicted that millions of US jobs may be at risk of being replaced by machines. In the episode The Gift, an alien humanoid crash lands near the Texas-Mexico border on Earth. He has killed a police officer in self-defense and was wounded by another. He winds up at a local bar and is treated for his wounds by a doctor, and befriends a young boy named Pedro. He gives the kid a gift and says he'll explain what it is later. Unfortunately, as the episode reaches its conclusion, he's shot dead by panicked locals and his gift is burned. Turns out Pedro's gift, now destroyed, was the vaccine cure for all forms of cancer.
So we have not just killed a man, we've killed a dream.
Sadly, this episode comes extremely close to predicting current real-life fears about how immigrants are received and perceived in the US. And this, of course, brings us to the Season 1 episode, The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street. Here, we witness a neighborhood descend into chaos after they panic about an impending alien invasion, pointing fingers at one another, suspecting them to be an alien invader.
It's Bob Weaver's house!
It isn't Bob Weaver's place! It's Don's house!
It's the Williams house! It's the kid, I tell you! It's Charlie! He's the one!
Today, we're seeing screaming matches unfold in America and the world over immigration like never before. In 2018, Congress broke the record for the longest ever government shutdown over a disagreement to fund a wall at the US-Mexico border. And in the midst of a global pandemic, the Trump administration has not ceased construction on a border wall despite calls from lawmakers and environmental advocates to save taxpayer funds and protect the public's health during the coronavirus outbreak.
There are weapons that are simply thoughts, attitudes, prejudices, to be found only in the minds of men. For the record, prejudices can kill, and suspicion can destroy, and a thoughtless, frightened search for a scapegoat has a fallout all of its own, for the children and the children yet unborn. And the pity of it is that these things cannot be confined to the Twilight Zone.